WIBTA, if I cancel the wedding after my fiancé told me I should give my son up for adoption? I, 26M, have been with my fiancé, 29M, for 3 years. Our relationship seemed like a beautiful turning point in my life, but recent events have made me question everything. I need to provide a lot of context to explain why I'm now considering canceling our wedding, but it's important to understand how deeply I'm conflicted about this decision. First, let me tell you a bit about my past and how I ended up as a single father at a young age. When I was 15, I came out to my parents as gay. Growing up in a small, conservative town, it was incredibly hard to muster up the courage to admit who I really was, especially when everything and everyone around me made me feel like there was something wrong with me. My parents were devout Christians who believed that homosexuality was a sin and a phase I would grow out of. They were more concerned about what the neighbors would think than about my well-being. I had hoped that telling them the truth would be freeing, but it only made my life more unbearable. They tried to convince me that I was just confused, and that if I slept with a girl, I would see that I was really straight. They claimed it was just a matter of not having experienced the right kind of intimacy. My father sat me down one night and gave me a long lecture about the responsibilities of being a man. He told me that I was young, that my mind was easily influenced, and that my feelings were just temporary. My mother cried constantly, telling me how much shame I was bringing to the family. They arranged for me to meet with their pastor, who spent hours telling me that my soul was at stake and that I needed to repent and change my ways. It felt like I was drowning in their expectations, and no one cared how much I was struggling. Eventually, under their pressure and desperate to please them, I agreed to go to a party and try to be normal. My parents thought that if I just experimented with a girl, I would come to my senses. It was a reckless night, fueled by their misguided beliefs and my desperate need for acceptance. I met a girl, Emily, who was a bit older and also from a conservative family. She seemed lonely, and we bonded over feeling out of place. We ended up in a bedroom upstairs. I remember feeling detached, like I was watching someone else go through the motions. It was quick, awkward, and I knew immediately that it wasn't right for me. I didn't enjoy it at all, and it just confirmed what I had already known about myself. After that night, I tried to forget the whole thing ever happened. Emily and I never really talked again. We exchanged awkward nods at school, but that was it. A few months later, she came to me in tears, telling me she was pregnant. I was stunned, and I had no idea what to do. I was just a kid myself, barely able to take care of my own needs, let alone someone else's. I told my parents, hoping for some kind of support or guidance, but instead, they were furious. They blamed me for being irresponsible and told me that this was the consequence of my lifestyle. They demanded a paternity test, which confirmed that the baby was mine. When my son, Leo, was born, Emily vanished. I don't know if she ran away or if her family forced her to leave, but she just disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, I was a father at 16 with no idea how to take care of a baby. My parents helped me initially, but it was clear they resented both of us. They constantly reminded me that Leo was a mistake and that I needed to step up and take responsibility. For the first few years, I did everything I could to be a good dad, but I was overwhelmed. I was juggling high school, a part-time job, and the constant judgment from my parents and everyone in our town. When I turned 18, my parents told me that their obligation was over. They had done their part, and it was time for me to move out and take full responsibility for my actions. They kicked me out with barely any warning, saying that they couldn't support me forever. I scrambled to find a place to live, eventually landing in a small, rundown apartment that was barely fit for a single person, let alone a young father and his toddler. It was a tough time, and I often felt like I was on the brink of losing everything. But through it all, Leo was my light. He was the one thing that made every struggle worthwhile. I was determined to be the best father I could be, no matter how hard it got. For years, it was just the two of us. Leo was a sweet, sensitive kid who loved superheroes, drawing, and playing with his little action figures. He was the kind of child who made friends easily and had a smile that could light up a room. Despite all the challenges, we built a life together. I worked multiple jobs to keep us afloat, often working late into the night after Leo was asleep. I didn't have time for dating, and honestly, I didn't think anyone would ever want to take on the baggage of my complicated life. My focus was entirely on Leo and making sure he had a better upbringing than I did. I never once regretted having him, even though it was far from easy. Then, 3 years ago, I met my fiancé, Ryan, at a coffee shop downtown. It was one of those moments that felt almost like fate. I was there with Leo, who was drawing pictures of dinosaurs on napkins while I tried to catch up on some work. Ryan walked in, tall and handsome with a kind smile, and he ended up sitting at the table next to ours. He complimented Leo's drawing, and the two of them started talking about their favorite dinosaurs. Ryan seemed genuinely interested in Leo, not just in that polite, obligatory way that adults often pretend to be. He actually sat there listening to my son ramble about T-Rexes and velociraptors, and even drew a few doodles of his own. I was struck by how easy it was to talk to Ryan. He was warm, funny, and smart, and there was an instant connection between us. We exchanged numbers, and before long, we were hanging out regularly. I introduced him to Leo properly after a few weeks, and they hit it off immediately. It felt like I had finally found someone who accepted my past without judgment. Ryan was understanding about my situation and never made me feel ashamed about being a young dad. We started dating, and it didn't take long for our relationship to get serious. Ryan seemed like the perfect partner. He was attentive, loving, and always made an effort to include Leo in everything we did. He would come over with little gifts for Leo, like a new coloring book or a small toy, and they'd spend hours building Lego sets together. Ryan even helped with homework sometimes, and he'd come to Leo's school plays and soccer games. Leo adored him, and I thought Ryan felt the same way. He was the first person I had trusted enough to let into our lives fully, and for the first time, I felt like maybe I could have a real family. A few months ago, Ryan proposed to me on a quiet evening at his apartment. Leo wasn't there, which I thought was a little strange at first, but Ryan told me he wanted it to be just the two of us for that moment. He said he had been waiting for the right time, and that he couldn't imagine his life without me. I was over the moon. I thought this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where Leo and I wouldn't have to struggle alone anymore. Ryan's proposal was simple, but heartfelt. He got down on one knee with a ring that wasn't flashy, but was perfect for me, elegant and understated. I said yes without hesitation, and we started making plans for the wedding. I wanted Leo to be a big part of the ceremony. I imagined him as our ring bearer, or maybe even my best man. He was so excited when I told him about the wedding, asking a million questions about what he would wear and what his role would be. It was adorable and heartwarming, and it made me feel like we were finally moving towards the happy ending we deserved. I couldn't wait to see Leo, all dressed up, walking down the aisle with a big smile on his face. However, a week ago, everything came crashing down. Ryan and I were discussing wedding plans at his place. We were sitting at the kitchen table, going over the guest list and talking about the ceremony. I brought up Leo, saying I wanted him to be the ring bearer, or maybe even my best man, and Ryan just stared at me with this blank expression. I thought he hadn't heard me, so I repeated it, but he still didn't respond right away. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "Why would Leo be at our wedding if we're putting him up for adoption?" I was completely blindsided. I laughed, thinking it was some kind of sick joke, but Ryan wasn't laughing. He looked at me with this dead serious expression and said that once we got married, he thought we would start fresh by adopting children who were biologically neither of ours. He claimed it wasn't fair that Leo was only related to me and that adopting together would make us a real family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him flat out that I would never give Leo up for adoption. Not now, not ever. Ryan seemed shocked by my reaction. He tried to reason with me, saying that I was letting my emotions cloud my judgment. He said that Leo was a reminder of a traumatic part of my life and that I deserved a fresh start. He even went as far as to say that I would love any children we adopted together more than Leo because they wouldn't carry the same painful associations. I was furious. I told him that Leo was my son, not some burden or mistake, and that I loved him more than anything in the world. I couldn't believe that Ryan, the man who had spent years bonding with Leo, could say something so heartless. The argument escalated quickly. Ryan accused me of being unreasonable and not considering our future together. He said that if I really loved him, I would at least be open to the idea of adopting other children. He argued that our marriage would be stronger if we started on equal footing, without any remnants of my past. He even suggested that we could try therapy to process my feelings about Leo's conception, implying that my love for my son was somehow misplaced because of how he came into the world. I was in disbelief. I couldn't fathom how Ryan could see Leo as anything other than my beloved son. I told him that I didn't need therapy to accept my own child, and that if he couldn't accept Leo, then we had no future together. Ryan got angry and gave me an ultimatum. Either I choose him, and we build a new family together, or I choose Leo and stay stuck in my past. Without a second thought, I chose Leo. I told Ryan that I would never, ever abandon my son, and if he couldn't handle that, then he wasn't the man I thought he was. Ryan left that night and hasn't come back. He texted me later, saying that he understood my position as a father, but still thought we could work things out. He suggested that we could still adopt another child after the wedding so that things would feel more balanced. He promised that he would accept Leo, but insisted that having another child would make our family feel more complete. It felt like a half-hearted attempt to compromise, but I wasn't buying it. His words had already shown me how he truly felt, and I couldn't unhear them. Since that argument, I've been spending all my free time with Leo, trying to distract him from the fact that Ryan hasn't been around. We've gone to the zoo, built massive Lego sets, and watched his favorite movies, but he keeps asking when Ryan will be back. He's so excited about the wedding and keeps talking about what he'll wear and how he'll help me pick out a tuxedo. Every time he mentions Ryan or the wedding, my heart sinks. I don't know how to tell him that the wedding might not happen anymore. I don't want to break his heart, but I also can't marry someone who doesn't see Leo as part of our family. To make matters worse, Ryan's parents have gotten involved. They called me, saying that I'm overreacting and that Ryan just wants a traditional family dynamic. They offered to pay for counseling for both of us, implying that I needed help to see things from Ryan's perspective. They said that Ryan had always dreamed of adopting children and that this was just his way of trying to create a family that felt balanced and fair. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't be willing to compromise, and they kept saying that I was being selfish by refusing to even consider adoption. Their words made me realize that Ryan's views weren't just his. They were shaped by his upbringing, just as mine were. His parents clearly saw Leo as an obstacle to the perfect family they envisioned for their son. They didn't care that Leo was a real, living person with feelings. To them, he was just a symbol of my past that needed to be erased. It was like I was back in my hometown, being judged and told that my love was wrong. I feel stuck. On one hand, I know in my heart that canceling the wedding is the right thing to do. I can't marry someone who would ever suggest giving up my son, even in a moment of anger or confusion. On the other hand, I'm terrified of what canceling the wedding will do to Leo. He's already lost so much in his young life, and he's grown so attached to Ryan. I don't want him to feel abandoned or think that it's his fault that things fell apart. He deserves stability, love, and a family that embraces him completely. I've been lying awake at night, replaying everything in my mind. I keep thinking about all the little moments, the way Ryan used to play with Leo, how we'd all cook dinner together, and the nights we spent watching movies on the couch. It's hard to reconcile those memories with the harsh reality of what Ryan said. I keep wondering if I missed the signs, if I was so desperate for a happy ending that I ignored the red flags. I've been talking to my closest friends, trying to get advice, but opinions are split. Some say I should give Ryan another chance, that maybe he was just overwhelmed and said things he didn't mean. Others are adamant that I need to end it now before Leo gets hurt even more. I don't know what to do. My mind is telling me to walk away, to protect my son at all costs, but my heart is still tangled up in the idea of what could have been. I never wanted to be a single parent forever, and I thought Ryan was the answer to my prayers. But now, I'm faced with the possibility that I'll have to start over again alone. So, would I be the AH if I cancel the wedding? Am I overreacting to Ryan's comments? Or am I justified in putting my son first? I love Ryan, but I love my son more. I need to make the right choice for Leo, even if it means letting go of the future I thought we'd have.